Well, hello and welcome. This is Jennifer McGuire, and I appreciate you stopping by. Today I have a fun stamping trick for you. This trick allows you to create 2 cards at once, and you can use any stamps for this. You could either use a large stamp or a cluster of small stamps. And by just doing this trick, you can create several cards at once. So I'm going to show you several examples using a stamping tool and without a stamping tool. So you can do it with or without a stamping tool. I'm going to start with the stamping tool to create the cards that you see here. I'm going to start by using the Clearly Besotted Pretty Pansies stamp set. I like that Clearly Besotted has lots of flower stamp sets that have large clusters. I'll link to a few of my favorites. I also have 2 pieces of white cardstock. These are cut to 4 by 5 1/4, so slightly smaller than the note card they'll go on. I've put them in my stamping tool right up against each other, and now I'm positioning my large stamp so it's about halfway on each of those pieces. So I'm going to ink this up with Hero Art's Intense Black ink. The reason I chose this ink is because I plan to do Copic coloring. So you can see that it's stamped on both the pieces. Now I'm going to flip both of these over and repeat that stamping again. So this will stamp in the other corner. So what I'm doing is stamping 2 pieces at once. So I have 2 pieces to create 2 cards. And this is a great way to do it with your stamping tool because you can be sure to get enough of the floral image on both of the cards. Okay, so now I'm putting my pieces back into the MISTI, but this time I'm scooting them over. And now I'm going to position the same image, so it's about halfway on both of them, and I'll have that on the other side of the panels. So I'm going to go ahead and do the stamping again with the Hero Art's Black Intense ink. Now you could do heat embossing, you could do no line coloring, you could do whatever you want for this. I knew that I would be watching a movie later in the day, so I decided to do all of the stamping, grab my Copics and take them with me. So that's why I'm doing a bunch of pre-stamping for Copic coloring. So again, I rotated both of my pieces 180 degrees, put my magnet down to hold them still, and I'm going to stamp them again. So you only need to position your stamp twice, but you rotate it to stamp it each twice. So there you have 2 beautiful backgrounds, and you can see how it's kind of got this mirror look to it. So beautiful. I wanted to show you another example with the MISTI. This is using the W+9 Christmas Rose. This is a beautiful large stamp. In fact, it's so large that you only need to stamp it twice for these cards. So I'm positioning it so it's about halfway on both of the white pieces of cardstock. And I again am going to stamp this with the Hero Art's Black Intense ink. I'm using some of the smaller separate leaf images from the stamp set to kind of fill in some of the area to make it bigger, since we're only going to stamp this twice. I did decide that I wanted a little something in those corners. So I'm taking one of the small flowers and those same leaves, kind of positioning them over that little line between the 2 pieces, and I'm going to stamp those too. So I'll stamp them on this side, and then I'm going to flip them and stamp them on the other side. And you can see how fast this is because I'm stamping 2 pieces at once. I am a fan of any technique that results in 2 for 1. Okay, now for the next example, I'm not going to use a stamping positioner. This is the Simon Says Stamp Let Us Rejoice stamp set. I really like the sentiments in this and that large bouquet. Now I have a piece of Post-it tape here that I'm going to use to hold my 2 pieces of white cardstock right up against each other, and I'm going to stamp along the edge. So I have this on an acrylic block. Notice that part of the stamp is hanging off. That's okay. I don't actually use that part of the stamp. I'm just going to stamp it so it's halfway on each of these pieces. Now you could use any size cardstock here. You could use bigger pieces of cardstock for bigger images, but if you have smaller stamp images, you might want to start with smaller pieces of cardstock. All of my examples today start with 4 by 5 1/4, but on some of them, which you'll see in a moment, I do trim them down. So here I am stamping it the second time on this side. Now I can easily peel my 2 pieces away from that Post-it tape and then temporarily hold together the other 2 sides of the white cardstock. Now I'll tell you, this was one of those days. I don't know if you guys have these days when you're creating, when you're kind of in a hurry, you know you don't have much time, And so you start to hurry and you end up making a mess. I'm telling you, I had black ink everywhere. I don't know why. I do stamping all the time. I shouldn't do this, but for some reason I had black ink all over my hands and I was making a mess. You'll see fingerprints that I later had to erase away, but I don't know. It was just one of those days, but that's okay. I had fun creating and I made a bunch of cards. Okay, so at this point, I have both of my pieces stamped. I think that's so cool how you can create these beautiful, like framed floral looking panels very quickly. But I decided I wanted to kind of have a little bit coming in from the sides, so I'm just going to go ahead and freely stamp this little bit of the stamp on both of the pieces. I think it'd be fun to do this technique with snowflakes, so you kind of have a frame of snowflakes too for winter cards. I plan to try that next. Okay, so my next examples use the Simon Says Stamp Kind Flower stamp set. This stamp set is available on its own, or you can buy it as part of their recent kit with some amazing other products. I sometimes struggle with kits. However, this is by far my favorite kit that Simon Says Stamp has had to offer so far. This is a large stamp set with beautiful messages of kindness. And then that cluster of flowers with the word kind in the center, so gorgeous. I highly recommend this stamp set. I'll be using it a lot in future videos. Okay, so I have a couple pairs of cards using this stamp set. For the first one, I'm using this large flower cluster that has the word kind in the center. And I'm going to stamp it so that that word kind is halfway on both of them. What I will do is stamp this on all four sides. You'll see it overlaps a bit, but once I color it, you'll never notice. You could mask if you want to, but I don't think it's really necessary. Once I'm done stamping on all four sides, I will trim off the bit of the word kind that you can see, so I'm only left with the frame of floral cluster. Now I think this image is beautiful, and it would be beautiful just stamped in the center of a card and colored, maybe gold heat embossed, but I wanted to show you a creative way to use it today. Sorry my head gets in the way there. Okay, so now that I have done all my stamping, I'm going to trim a little bit off of of all four of the sides, so you don't see that word kind there anymore, but you could definitely leave it if you wanted to. Now I'm going to end up using these to make smaller cards. I've really enjoyed making smaller cards lately. They are faster to make and they're just so cute. So the final card, I don't know what it ends up being. It's about 4.5 by 3.25 is my guess. And I'll just put it in a 4-bar envelope. Okay, so I'm going to use the same stamp set again. But this time I'm going to use some of the little florals to show you that you can use a cluster of smaller images for this technique also. So what I'm doing is arranging a bunch of small images together so that they're halfway on both of the white panels. I'm pressing down my acrylic block so the edge of my block lines up with the edge of my white cardstock. That'll save me time and kind of eyeballing it when I do the stamping. Okay, so I again am going to ink this up with black intense ink, and there I'm going to line the acrylic block up with the edge of the white paper and stamp it down. And I will do this again on the other side. So any stamp set really could work for this technique. You just want to stamp it so that it's halfway on both of the panels. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I planned on doing a bunch of Copic coloring, so I was preparing a bunch of pieces that needed coloring. If you wanted to save time, you could definitely skip the coloring and instead just stamp these images with a colorful ink, or you could do beautiful heat embossing. You could even do this for watercolor. You can do anything with this technique. So here I wanted to arrange my dirty flowers on the other corner. I just wanted a smaller cluster there. So I put down some clear packaging to protect my cards so that I didn't get the ink on them as I was positioning these. So that's why that piece of plastic is there. Again, I'm going to pick up the stamps all at once, and now I can stamp them onto the other corners. So when you are using your own little stamps to create a cluster, you can come up with 2 different clusters to stamp the 2 different times. So you can kind of get a little variety if you want to. So now I have a bunch of stamped panels that are ready to Copic color. I did some basic coloring, and then I colored over the images with my clear Wink of Stella Shimmer pen, so they had some shine. Now it's time to do the sentiment in the center of each of these. Lately, I've really been liking my MISTI Creative Corners. There's this little L-shaped piece, and I use it to make sure that my stamps are straight. I used to use a transparent grid piece, and I still use that sometimes. But just to be sure I have a straight sentiment, this little L piece is helpful. So I'm arranging my little sentiments in the center there. This is from that Simon Says Stamp card kit stamp set called Kind Flowers. And I just kind of give it a little push with the edge of that L, and it makes sure that it's straight. So now I can stamp this in the center with no problem. Another thing that I've been doing lately with my sentiments, whenever I do a card and I have it complete and I need to add a sentiment, is I do it in my MISTI with my VersaFine black ink. And I stamp it once very lightly, and then I stamp it again very lightly. And I find that I get a beautiful, crisp black image every time. I figure if I've spent this much time making this panel, I want to make sure that that sentiment looks nice. So there you can see me ink it up and stamp it one more time. So there we have our completed card. All we have to do is put that onto a card base. I used a piece of craft foam behind the panel just so it had some dimension. And now I'm adding Nuvo Drops. On my cards, I use some of the Jewel Drops. That's what you see here. It's a clear tinted product, so this one has a little peach tint to it. In the center of the flowers, I often use like a copper glitter Nuvo Drop, just so that it has like a brown texture to it. Here I'm using some pink metallic for the little dots for these berries. And I felt like I wanted another little twig of berry sticking out on the bottom and the top. So I just used my black pen to draw a line, and I created my own little berries with the Nuvo Drops. So sometimes if you create a card using this technique and you find like an empty space or kind of like a little space where you feel it needs to have something added, you can either add small images, little small stamped images, or add Nuvo Drops to kind of fill them in, or little accents. So I wanted to show you all the completed cards. These are the first ones I made. You can see the beautiful shimmer that it has thanks to the Wink of Stella pen, and the little drops to add some accent to it. Again, these are the pretty pink pansies from Clearly Besotted with the Simon Says Stamp Kind Flowers sentiment in the center. On this one, I use black Nuvo Drops in the center of the flowers and white drops as accents. Here we have the two that I used the Simon Says Stamp Let Us Rejoice stamp set. On one of them, I did pink with the kindness sentiment on the inside. And on the other, I colored it red to give it kind of a holiday feel with a religious sentiment on the center. That is also from that Let Us Rejoice stamp set that I love so much. Now these are the ones where I used the separate flowers to create clusters. You can see how my two panels are a little bit different here. For this one, I drew some little yellow dots and put a black circled line around them with a black Sharpie, just to kind of fill in some of the spaces between. Here I just did little yellow dots with some Nuvo Drops. And I also put Nuvo Drops in the center of all the flowers. The sentiments from these cards are from the Birch Press Just Because stamp set. I really like this stamp set because it has the cursive sentiment that's large and coordinating dies that you can buy to cut them out, and also smaller sentiments to stamp underneath or on the inside. Here are the smaller cards that I created using that Kind Floral large stamp, and I used a sentiment from the Hero Arts You Are Loved stamp set. I'm using this stamp set an awful lot, and a portion of the proceeds from this stamp set go to the Kind campaign, so it's definitely a great stamp set to get. Now here are some other pansy cards that I did. For this one, I used little black Nuvo Drops, and I stamped a simple sentiment in the center. This sentiment is from the Simon Says Stamp Gina K We Can Do This stamp set. 100% of the sales of this stamp set, so every penny you pay for the stamp set, goes to hurricane relief. So this is a great set to get also, and I really like the encouragement stamp sets or sentiments in it. And here we have the Christmas Rose from W+9. I created two different sentiments in the center. I used Nuvo Drops to do accents. The sentiment on the left card is from the Clearly Besotted Say It's Christmas stamp set. This has a lot of beautiful sentiments that would be good for a variety style of cards. And for the right, I used that Birch Press Just Because stamp set again. Here I used the script and the little basic font together on the front of the card. So there you have a fun trick for creating 2 cards at once by stamping on the edge. I hope you'll try this. I link the supplies in my YouTube description below, or go to my blog for photos of all the cards and more information. In the middle are 2 other videos that might be helpful to you. Also hit subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I hope to see you again soon. Have a wonderful week.